Welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us today. This is the first Boutique Hotel News webinar of the year, and today we're going to be talking about dishing out F&B operational excellence. My name is Eloise Hanson. I am the host of today's webinar, and I'm also the editor of hospitality here at Boutique Hotel News, and we're a trade publication covering the global boutique, lifestyle and luxury hotel industry. Today's sponsor is Iris, a digital ordering, guest directory and concierge solution for hotels and restaurants. And we have a short video to play for you today. And further contact details have been popped into the chat if you would like to learn more about Iris. A quick overview of how today's going to run. We'll spend around 45 minutes in discussion with our panelists today, followed by some time at the end to take any questions from the audience. So please submit these using the Q&A function, and I'll get round to those as and when appropriate. And a polite reminder that this webinar is being recorded, and everybody that has registered will receive a copy of that recording within 48 hours. So let's meet our panelists for today, and to give you some further background info on Iris, I'm going to hand over straight to Graham. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Eloise. Graham Rushin. I'm VP of Sales and Marketing at Iris. I've actually been with Iris now for just over 10 years. Prior to that, I was a PMS and a point of sale boy. But really, I'm here looking forward to presenting today and being with you today.
Thank you, Graham. And I'm going to move from left to right as per the PowerPoint slide. So I'm going to hand over to Philip next, please.
Hi, my name is Philip McGuinness, and I'm a founder of Tiny Cloud Kitchens. Tiny Cloud Kitchens was started in 2001. It specializes in licensing, franchising proven food concepts into the hotel industry. In the last 3 years, we built it into over 300 locations across Europe, Northern Ireland, and Ireland, and the UK. And simply, literally what we do is we provide concepts that sit on hotel, restaurants, meeting events, for delivery, literally across all revenue streams. And our goal is to drive incremental revenue by also driving down kind of wage costs, but also giving something very different on the menu which also will increase dwell time within your restaurant. So it's been a great journey, and it's brilliant trying and building a business.
Thanks a lot, Philip. And Martin, coming to you next, please.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Martin Voštiar. I'm the BNF coordinator here at W Barcelona. I'm basically dealing with all things related to F&B, or BNF as we call it in the W hotels, but more of the back of house. So all the administrative parts of F&B, as well as anything to do with technology, for example, namely Iris. So making sure that the platform is being well integrated into our operations, and making sure we're using it and leveraging it as well as we can. Very excited to be here and learn a lot of new things today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Martin. And last but not least, James, over to you.
Hi, Thank you for the invite. My name is James Hacon. I'm the managing partner of a company called Think Hospitality. Spent my entire life in hospitality, growing up in it, and then going to study law, hating it with a passion, coming back to the sector. And within that time, I've worked actually starting in hotels and boutique hotels, moved into development and restaurant groups, and really flipping between consulting and being an executive and board director. And at Think, we're global hospitality, food and beverage strategy consultants. We're based across the UK, UAE, Estonia, and Denmark. And ultimately, we accelerate the growth of restaurant brands and maximize the food and beverage opportunity for hoteliers, retailers, and property developers. Currently working with between 20 and 30 brands, literally all over the world. So it's fantastic to be here today with such esteemed company.
Thank you very much, James. And all the LinkedIn profiles of our panelists have been in the chat, posted into the chat, and I encourage you all to connect and learn more. So just to provide some context for today's session, every year we publish our trend predictions for the year ahead. And for 2024, I wrote about the topic of profitability pressure. And in hotel F&B, it hasn't been the easiest of rides. For example, we can see on your screens, we've seen some restaurant closures. But RSM UK has noticed that hoteliers are making use of service offerings such as their F&B to top up the shortfall in revenue as ADRs start to begin to stabilize and gross operating profits decline. So it's helping to soften that GOP. And Hilton very recently has clearly seen the opportunity to launch an F&B consulting arm called Stir Creative Collective, which is aimed at supporting its hotels to reimagine and tailor F&B concepts to meet the evolving needs of guests. And on the next slide, to highlight a couple of features that we've run on Boutique Hotel News, we've explored destination restaurants and whether hoteliers should outsource their F&B operations. And the links to these articles have been popped into the chat if you're interested in reading. Though please read these after the webinar because we've got lots to discuss today. And I just want to end today's context on a final story here about the Global Ambassador. This has been launched by restaurateur Sam Fox, and it's his first hotel project over in the States. And I can see that bringing F&B expertise into the hotel sector clearly has its benefits. And perhaps now is exactly the right time to be doing so, though arguably operating a hotel is a totally different ballgame. But let's talk about delivering F&B operational excellence. And I want to kick off with a question to James, if I may. Could you please highlight some emerging trends that are making an impact on hotel food and beverage?
Sure. I think it's a really fascinating time. When you think about trends more generally, you've got to consider where are these trends coming from. And it's interesting, of course, you've got the pull factors, so the consumers changing what they're looking for. And then you've got the push factors, where I think that you've got realities in the marketplace that are affecting change. And I think it's interesting at the moment, and I'll come on to some of the pull factors of what consumers are looking for, but actually I think the biggest trends and movement in the market are actually coming from those push factors relating to operators having to change the way that they work, restaurateurs, food and beverage, ultimately to do with financial pressures, the operational challenges. And I think that interestingly, the biggest changes we've seen over the past, really, I guess, since COVID, is a continuation of de-skilling operations and kitchens, trying to minimize costs quite significantly. And I think that by default has really resulted in this move to a simplification of proposition. I think if we look at food room service or in-room dining globally, it used to be almost a novel-sized book of dishes that you could buy. I think increasingly that's now become a much tighter delivery. And I think there's many more people are really starting to look at how they can work on a much smaller base of core products and SKUs to be able to deliver multiple options, but potentially with more personalization. So I guess that from a push factor, that's what we're seeing. From a pull factor, I think the personalization piece is definitely really strong and getting stronger. The idea that I don't really care what time of day or night it is. If I want something, I want something, and I want it delivered to what I'm looking for, not to a spec. And I think that this is really difficult for chefs to get their heads around, particularly and chef-led concepts. I think in the past we often had a view, and I grew up in much higher restaurants, which is that I'm the chef. I've decided what deserves to go on a menu today, and this is my vision, and therefore I'm not going to touch my vision. I think what we've actually seen is consumers on the flip side get to a point where they're used to having what they're looking for delivered how they want it. And I think that we're increasingly seeing hotels moving down the route of being much more consumer or guest focused than I would say being quite so focused around a very strong vision from a chef. But that, of course, does determine where you're going to be. I mean, if you're running a 2-star Michelin restaurant in your hotel, of course, the chef's view is going to be very, very strong and have a very strong place. If you're running a casual concept or something that's sitting within an all-day space, frankly, we should be serving what guests are looking for. I would say, interestingly as well, the guest/customer thing is quite interesting because, of course, most hoteliers come at this looking at what guests are looking for. And my challenge often is actually, particularly within boutique hotels, I've spent a lot of my career working within this space. We shouldn't really be looking for what guests are looking for first. We should be looking at what will work locally, understanding broader customer and occasions, really, because that's going to create a vibrant, upbeat environment that guests will want to stay in anyway. And I do think personally, my view very strongly is that F&B is the heartbeat of the hotel. So it's what creates that sense of place. Just to finish off on these kind of first points, I guess that more broadly, and we work with a lot of restaurant groups too, we are seeing a further divergence between food for fuel, so food that is for convenience, compared to food for experience. And I think that divergence is becoming more and more prolific, with a greater focus on the experience side of becoming more and more experiential and having to go above and beyond. And on the convenience side, making it much quicker, much easier to order and so on. And it's interesting, and I'll let Graham jump in here with the Iris piece, but I think it's interesting that, where we're seeing technology adding undoubted value is on the convenience side, and actually on the experience side, it can add a lot of value, but it needs to be done with a more cautious approach, because I think it's about making sure that it doesn't take away from the human element of it or experience, and preserving what should be a fantastic delivery of hospitality. I guess that the place you don't want to be at the moment, to me, is in the mid-market. I think from a restaurant and F&B perspective, I think you either want to be at one end or the other. If we think of, let's think of outside of the hotel world, brands that are doing fantastically right now. We hear a lot about Big Mama Group. For those people that know London, Flatiron, these guys are nailing this kind of affordable luxury piece, which I think is really fascinating. It's this space of hyper value in beautiful surroundings. And I think that if it was one trend I'd pull out from everything for people to go away with, is that I'm not sure people will put up with mediocre food for high prices anymore, which I would say, somewhat tongue-in-cheek, a lot of hoteliers have got away with for a very long time. See, Graham's got his hand up, so he's ready.
Yes, let's hand straight over to Graham.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think just to add to what you're saying there, I think from your push-pull factors, or the way you described it there, one of the things that we saw actually pre-COVID was, from a technology stack perspective, was a starting to move away from the requirements to have the physical app and all that sort of stuff. And I think is what COVID has done is it's got everybody used to, shall we call it the QR code, and that ease of use and that ease of technology of actually engaging with solutions. So now you don't have to be a rocket scientist to be able to get to the app store to get something to then continue. It's there, it's in front of you, it's available to you. And we find that some of our most successful locations are actually driving that forward and recommending it to the guests at every opportunity they can, because what they've actually realized is from the guest perspective and that human touch perspective, my guest actually doing what they want to do, which is potentially actually order it themselves. And then it's freeing up the staff to actually then be more attentive to them as well. So it actually complements in both ways. Although the staff member may not be actually delivering the service of what would you like, they're then able to actually do other things with that guest and potentially drive up revenues in other ways. So that's certainly where we've seen things going, is that freeing up of staff to do other things and look after that guest in other ways. So I really just wanted to chip in on that.
Graham, whilst we're with you, could you please build on, we've talked about the sort of front end guest facing applications of technology, but could you maybe comment on how technology is being deployed to streamline the operations, looking at it from a staff point of view?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So I think, again, just coming back to post-pandemic and what we're seeing at the moment, as James was saying, your typical F&B environment everybody jumps to when you actually think about the hotel space is in-room dining, is what we've seen as a massive drive of properties now looking at the other F&B outlets that they have, be it the pool, be it the lounge, be it the conference and banqueting space. Those are now driving towards getting technology in to assist the staff. And if you look at what we do as a solution, we are very focused on having what I'm going to call true integrations to the third party. So when we integrate to a point of sale system, for example, we do it as a true integration, meaning that the data that's sitting in us is actually the data that's in that point of sale. So there's no database matching or anything like that goes on between the two platforms. It is true data. But what that means is that from a staff perspective, they can actually be assured that when a guest is potentially placing an order for F&B, that's actually what's going to pop out in the point of sale. When you do a database match solution, you can end up with situations of a mismatch in that database match solution, and that then causes more challenges to the staff than it is, a true solution. So by having true integrations to point of sales, I do believe that's where technology has taken us to, and that's what we've been focused on certainly for the last number of years. It's allowing staff, and it's saving them about 3.5 minutes per order. If you take a typical order, you haven't got, the staff member having to answer the phone, broker the language barrier, and everything else that goes with it, and then punch it into the point of sale. They can literally, it's printing in the kitchen, it's doing everything for them, and they're saving that time. So now they can really be more attentive to that customer. We were looking at one of our poolside operations the other day and just looking at the sheer traffic that actually happens around the pool when you don't have technology in place. And it's fascinating to watch how that changes when now you actually need a runner to get it to the guest. But now that staff member who was potentially taking the order is now going out, being sociable, talking about other experiences that the property has. And hey, did you know we're doing this tonight? It's that sort of environment that really drives up that overall experience. So it's not just about the technology. It's not just about the F&B ordering. If we're looking at that, it's about everything else that staff member can now bring. And I mean, we have, as James said, we have a lot of properties that are strapped on the resources that are available to them. And it's obviously helping deal with that. I talked to a number of properties last week where they were going, we're trying to open up our in-room dining and we can't because we don't have the staff. We can't man it. We've got the kitchen manned, but we can't actually get those orders coming in. And they were like, we're terrified, Graham, to do this. And I explained and went through the platform and went, you can throttle it, you can manage the orders coming in, all that sort of stuff. And they went, you know what? That's it. I get it now. I understand what you're actually trying to do and how you're not going to overwhelm our operations by putting in technology, because that's another fear that properties have, is that by putting in technology, you're going to overwhelm the kitchen, you're going to overwhelm the staff. So, it's very much a fine balance between here's the technology, but it's going to work in your operation, specific to your size kitchen, specific to what it needs to be able to do. And you can certainly make the technology do that today.
Thanks, Graham. I want to bring Martin into the conversation here to talk about the operational strategies that have been deployed and proven successful at W Barcelona, and how it has helped to enhance your F&B services. So Martin, could you just provide an overview of where you're at in your journey and how you've approached to your strategy within F&B?
Absolutely. Thank you. So I think both James and Graham actually mentioned some very good points that are very relevant to my answer as well. So namely, James mentioned that now more hotels are looking at their offering and trying to streamline as well. So instead of having dozens of different dishes available to the guests, but then eventually only selling a handful of them, and also potentially losing out on the quality of the dishes, we're always revising our menu, our offering, both for the food and beverage, to ensure that the quality is where we want it to be, and also looking at the time it takes. So it might be that we might have a dish that's, you know, really, really fun for the guest as well. We're selling it a lot, but we might be noticing, hey, actually this takes too long for the kitchen to get it ready, which when you combine it with also the delivery time, we might be looking at a problem here. So we're constantly revising this to ensure that the guest experience is where we want it to be. Apart from that, Graham mentioned the convenience for the guest as well, right? So I look at this convenience for both parties, for the guest and for the staff, making it easier to place this in-room dining order. It's always going to be very beneficial for both parties. So like Graham mentioned, the staff then has more time and more opportunities to dedicate themselves to exactly communicating with the guest more, maybe informing them of the events taking place within the hotel or around the city, basically building this rapport with the guest, making sure that it's a more personal experience rather than just being focused on taking the phone calls, making the orders. So it frees up the staff as well to be able to focus on enhancing the guest experience, apart from only taking the order, delivering it, and then running back to the office to take another order. And actually here at W Barcelona, we're using Iris directly in this sense as well. So it's not only a way to order in-room dining, we also use it as kind of a dashboard where the guests have information about events happening in the city, events happening at the hotel itself, information about all the venues, as well as the menus of the venues. Basically just something that they can easily access and then have it on their phone. And if they have any question about, hey, you know, what is happening this weekend, they can access it directly. So again, that convenience and comfort in the guest experience is very important to us. And we're trying to make sure that we're utilizing this as much as possible.
Hearing you mention, for those unaware, I used to work front of house in hotels. I've done breakfast, lunch, afternoon tea, hosting duties, and I can certainly relate to the toing and froing between lounge, kitchen, dining area. I mean, it's I can certainly see the benefits of having certain technologies in place to automate certain tasks. I want to stay with you for my next question, Martin, to look, or maybe you can highlight to us how you are measuring customer engagement. So what are your metrics and what are your tools in order to benchmark that success?
Mm-hmm. So we're using a variety of different basically tools that some of them include things like TripAdvisor reviews or Google reviews, but then we also have our internal methods of control. So again, that would be looking at guest satisfaction with various aspects of F&B, both the quality of the food as well as the service, and also analyzing any issues that might occur during the guest stay. We record everything, and this is being analyzed. This data is being analyzed, and you know, we might notice trends. So again, before I mentioned that we're revising also the offering in room dining to see not only which items are popular and being sold a lot, but also how is the quality, and are we able to consistently deliver them within the time frame that we want? And so then sending out these guest questionnaires, we might also then notice that, hey, you know, it might in in-room dining, it occurs quite frequently that somebody complains about this item taking too long, or maybe mistakes during ordering food. So then it might be important to look at, hey, if the guests are using this technology, the human error should be lower, right? Well, that's true, but maybe we don't have it set up correctly, right? Maybe there's something a bit misleading in the way we have set it up. So let's revise it again. Let's see, is it really intuitive and easy for the guest if they want to order? And I think, again, James mentioned the personalization, right? Maybe they want a specific dish, but slightly different. Have we made it easy enough for them, or is it a bit difficult? So yeah, just constantly revising the guest feedback to see if there's any issues that keep rising, and then tackling those specific issues.
Thanks, Martin. I can see Graham's hand is up. Before I bounce over to Graham, I'm just going to read out a comment from the floor. Some excellent comments made here when making life convenient and comfortable for guests. So just a pat on the back to everyone thus far that we are absolutely on topic and we're doing a cracking job. So Graham, your hand is up. Over to you.
Yeah, I just wanted to add a little bit more to what Martin is saying. There is, you know, I think so often a property looks at technology and goes, okay, that's a cost to me and that sort of stuff. If I take Martin's example, you know, as a property of ours, you know, I'll pretty much guarantee that as part of the journey, the guest is actually indulging and overindulging in those F&B environments, which then creates the ROI on the actual platform itself, so long as you've done it correctly. And Martin is 100% correct. It's got to be convenient for the customer. It's got to be easy for them to adjust. It's got to be, you know, that communication methodology has to be there as to, well, if I was on the phone, I would have asked this particular question. How can I do that now using technology? And that has to be there. But, you know, what we see across our estate is typically a sort of 20 to 30% uplift in a ticket value that's actually coming through from a digital order. And that then, you know, if you look at that and you compare that to labor costs and everything else and the labor saving and so on, it's, you know, it soon starts adding up. And I think that's another metrics, is the way that we inject our transactions into any solution. It actually complements and comes out of the reporting in those solutions. So Martin actually has the ability within his point of sale system to see exactly what has come through our channels and what has actually come through his human channels in there as well, which I think is very important. You know, being able to associate as to, you know, what revenue has been driven from where.
Thanks,
I think
Graham.
just to jump in, Eloise, actually, just to give two examples, and sorry for delaying you getting to Philip, because I'm sure he give us some incredible insight in a second. But it's interesting that we've done two projects recently with a couple of hotel properties both within major brands. And interestingly, both of them had seen quite significant uplift in revenue at site level based on increased ATV, which is what Graham was just referencing. Technology. What is interesting, models in this respect, because what we actually found is that they were still leaving money on the table at peak, because actually a pool bar example, rooftop pool bar in a big US city, what they found was that when someone is wanting to order and they've got the proactivity to want to order, of course, they're going on the app, they're spending more money than they would have done before because they're driven up through various techniques to drive more. But when they're not wanting to order, when they're in their comfortable space, the lack of prompt would mean that they weren't necessarily ordering. And interestingly, what we found was a hybrid model working really effectively in terms of having service staff encouraging the upsell and the second order value alongside that model. And actually what we found was that they were already up year on year anyway, and then they jumped by I think from memory between 15 and 20% again when we added that labor level back in. And interestingly, a London very well-known boutique lifestyle property, everyone assumes they do amazing numbers, out of the lobby because you can never get a seat in the lobby. I'm not going to say the name, but many of you will know who I'm talking about. Interestingly, however, that they don't make money out of the lobby because people sit and dwell too long and do nothing about it. Of course, we saw Citizen M try to put a £7 charge in pre-COVID. We've seen lots of people try and solve this issue of people using their space as free working space. Interestingly, actually, the learning that we've had is that social pressure and social prompting from a service team member asking people what it is that they can get for them more than once actually resulted in the best uptake and an uptick. And it's not to say you can't then push them to the app, but it's interesting that people don't like being confronted, and that doesn't necessarily need to be in a confrontational way. It can be in a very friendly way. But people start spending money as soon as they think that they are taking up a space they shouldn't be taking up. And I think for those people with lifestyle type properties, this is an ongoing issue. We get it all the time through new business inquiries.
Thanks, James. I do want to talk to Philip now, as I understand there's a lot of different models that cloud kitchens can operate under. And just to recap what we've talked about so far, we've talked about staff roles and efficiencies, we've talked about technology, wider operational strategies, quality over quantity, and trends, all of which do feed into the cloud kitchen, ghost kitchen model. So, Philip, for those that are listening who might not understand what we are talking about or referring to, how does a cloud kitchen function within a hotel restaurant?
And Eloise, thank you. I have to say, I thought that James's summary in terms of the present, exactly what's happening in today's world, I think was brilliant. So if you haven't listened to it, I think the first part of his summary there was brilliant. And the reason why is because the reason why I'm in business, or the reason why cloud kitchens are in business, is simply because of that summary. And yes, it has completely changed from, pre-COVID. It was all online. Graham will all know that, through Deliveroo, through Uber, creating kind of online concepts. And some people are heavily in the online space. Where we see it in terms of a cloud kitchen perspective, in cloud kitchens, really what they do is they are proven kitchen concepts that will sit and bolt on to an existing hotel operation. Okay, and these concepts are normally proven within an existing environment, and then they're brought into the hotel operation. And their key part there is to drive incremental revenue. And for us, when we say cloud kitchens, they will be across bar concepts, into restaurants, into meeting events, into a wedding space, and then also online for delivery. And a kitchen operator will be using the concept in different ways across all the different F&B outlets within the hotel. The concepts are normally really low skill, like commis chef, kitchen porter, low skill, high margin, and they're fast. And those critical three areas are the main, I suppose, challenges within today's environment. And they also provide something a little bit different that isn't on your typical hotel menu. Okay. I don't think that they do anything in terms of driving, because they're very low skill, they're not going to drive kind of major experiential kind of areas. But what they will do is they will give, which the customer wants at the moment, they will give the customer something a little bit different. And different hotels, so we deal with everything from the Hiltons to McGuinness to Holiday Inns, and everybody wants something a little bit different. But in essence, what they do is they give that kitchen something a little bit different, that is high margin, low skill, that is fast, and helps the kitchen drive that incremental revenue, or also helps driving revenue at key times where the hotel is under pressure, giving them much simpler ways to be able to deliver in operational areas. And they can sit, what we find, anything from 15 to about 50% of a given hotel menu, okay? In large parts, we will actually create the brand for the specific hotel or hotel chain, specific just for them. So it's really a ways, and go back to James's point, is that dwell time in restaurants are not busy since post-COVID. How do you give that customer something different? And they're bolt-on, they're simple concepts that really add quality and something a bit different across the hotel operation, if that makes sense.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the advantages that I do see of cloud kitchens is being quite nimble in terms of being able to adapt quite quickly to different trends, to different technologies, and how to integrate and implement. But as someone who's very close to how the business model works logistically and operationally, what factors do you believe, Philip, are critical for the sustained success of cloud kitchen concepts? We saw them rise to prominence, I suppose, during the pandemic. Suddenly everybody wanted a bit of a wanted to partner with a cloud kitchen. But in your words.
So the continued evolution of the menu, I think, is critical. I think as little, and James, don't kill me for this, but as little fresh food as possible, to be honest with you, really simple. And if you had said to me, you know, I would be saying publicly that I think frozen food is really good and it's quality. Well, I think that the development of really good quality food, freezer to fryer, freezer to steamer, has really evolved over the last couple of years. I think that simple food that's really good quality, that's on trend, and giving the kitchen staff a simple way for them to be able to deliver their existing operations as well as a concept, and getting the kitchen team to fully believe and understand it's actually helping them. And the critical part as well is being able to give them simplicity at the same time bringing down their labor costs. So maybe not having to rely on that expensive chef, that expensive, you know, executive chef they once believed they needed, but able to give them something different. So I would say making sure that they're able to manage, you know, the existing operation, and, you know, giving the fact that they can't get skilled labor, that's fine. Using the cloud brand to be able to deliver that. Number two, stay on trend. You can stay on trend, but we can as a business, we've shown that, be able to stay on trend, giving simple food. And, you know, each of our dishes ranges from 5 to about 9 minutes to prepare, right? So we need to be able to deliver fast, but quality dishes. So I think that's critical. Simplicity. And I think giving the operational, you know, proper, you know, simple manuals to be able to follow. And again, making sure that you're not telling them to do it, that you're explaining the benefits to their kitchen and getting them to buy into it, and that it isn't just theirs, it's going to help everybody. So and also the different ways that they can use it across a hotel. So the major growth in our business is through meeting and events. And so across all of our hotels, we will be live across everything from room service, restaurants, bars, banqueting, all the way straight through to, so it's trying to create different ways with that product, tour menus, every different way to be able to drive that incremental revenue as well as online. When I mean delivery, I mean across residential, but it's the way on the online space, the way Deliveroo is driving people to match KPIs, etc. So it's making sure that menu is so simple that they're able to meet those KPIs to be able to drive that revenue out to the local area, and then using those local customers maybe to come into the restaurant as well. Well, there's lots of different spin-offs from a marketing perspective.
Thank you. Thanks, Philip. I want to come back to James here. I sort of made a quick list of everything that we've covered thus far. And James, I want to ask you quite a broad question, and I'll tie this in with a question that we've got from the audience. James, what would be your advice to hoteliers who are looking to optimize their kitchen operations? And that's particularly looking at the trends that we've discussed thus far. And also, just to tie this in with a question from the floor, we have a question. We're thinking of opening a coffee house with some selection of food, offering food for convenience. What advice would experts give for menu selection and the use of technology. So I'm hoping, James, you can blend all my questions into one answer for me.
Oh, sorry, it cut out a second there, but I think I've got it all. So first of all, I'd back up Philip's view entirely. I'm not at all adverse to the idea of freezer to fryer food or freezer to any other production mechanism. In fact, I think that the from scratch cooking, if you actually look at the pure restaurant sector, I mean, it's very rare. Across the board. I'd say actually when going in and working with hotels, we see it far more often than we do in restaurant businesses. And I think that actually, if you look at the majority of large restaurant businesses, they're working off central production unit basis across the board. I mean, even the ones that are amongst the highest and most awarded venues. And one of the things I would say personally is look at what's adding value to your customers in terms of the food production and what you're doing from scratch. And there will be elements of that make sense, but actually a lot of it can be pre-prepped for sure in terms of simplification. I think a live brief about a cafe, I think, is a coffee shop. I think what's interesting within that is that you've got to think very clearly around what it is that consumers or your guests are looking for, and actually look very clearly at what is already happening on the high street. Frankly, if you go to any of the core coffee shop businesses, these people spend multi-millions of pounds per year on insight to determine what it is that people are looking for and what people aren't looking for. While I'm not suggesting to do a carbon copy, I would say that it's a good place to start is understanding the core range that these guys are doing. What I think that they never do particularly well, and we work with some of them, is I think that the fresh food piece, given that it's all pre-packaged for the most part, that's a challenge. And I would look at how you could add value with a core range of food items that can be undertaken and delivered by your front of house service staff quickly and easily, but probably with a little bit more end production than what you would have within a Starbucks, Costa, any of these kind of core players, where it's more out of a packet onto a Merry Chef and then out from there. So I think you can add more value to differentiate your proposition slightly. But I think that would probably be my immediate view, is don't reinvent what doesn't need to be reinvented, frankly. In terms of more broadly, though, your question about how to operationally simplify, I think first of all, as everybody here said, keep menus simple, run a small core. What I would also suggest is that actually we had an event last week where Bistro Pierre, who are a growing business in the UK, presented, and they gave a really great concept, and it was that they have a good, better, best methodology of creating their menus. So the base core menu has got good items that anyone can produce, including relatively low-level unskilled chefs. They then have a better range, which are the items that are still on the menu, but it requires slightly more organization and prep, and it may be that that's on your dinner menu rather than your lunch menu, and so on. And then the third option is best. And interestingly, they say they leave all of the most technically skilled elements in specials menus and as daily specials. So it enables you to be able to stretch up and stretch down based on the reality of what your capability of your culinary team is or brigade on any given day of the week. And I do think that the reason I liked it is that within hotels particularly, we tend to know that there are big peaks and big troughs. And, you don't want a very expensive resource sitting there on low periods of the day or week. So it makes sense to be looking at that good, better, best methodology. I'd also go back to saying, go to your suppliers, understand what quality produce can be either made for you to your specification or bought off the shelf, rather than you baking everything and making everything from scratch. I mean, it was pretty nuts. I was at a hotel in the Middle East recently where they were making all the bread from scratch every day. And whilst I'm not saying that can't be done and shouldn't be done, it's interesting that consumer research and the customer testing that we did showed that those guests didn't care at all whether that bread was being bought in or not. And actually at a cost level, it was producing a huge cost base for the hotel that was just completely unnecessary. So really looking to see where it's adding value. And I mean, we've worked with Michelin level restaurants that are outsourcing their bread production. So it's not to say that even at the very highest level that can't be done. I would also say that, sorry, Phil.
Look, sorry, James, I was going to back you up there. Apologies. Sorry, you should have interrupted.
No, it's cool. I would just say that in terms of thinking about people who are in-house guests and travelers, I travel circa half the year. I regularly stay in hotels. For the most part, I think a lot of consumers go to hotels, particularly business travelers, with the perception that I'm not going to get a great meal at a hotel. Like, that is the unfortunate perception that we've created over the last however many decades. And therefore, I will regularly eat before I come, or I'll regularly or I will come with a view that I'm going to order from a Deliveroo or whoever it is. I think pre-telling me that you've got decent food and a quality proposition, and encouraging me in some way to eat with you before coming is something that we've seen work really effectively, and making sure that the communication is really ahead of the reservation and the stay. The last thing I would say here is that I do think that there's a really significant increase in responsible consumerism. I think we only have one planet. We cannot afford to keep acting in the way that we do as consumers. And I would really encourage people to look at sourcing with seasons, minimizing wastage, and also looking at, linked to that, start looking at dynamic pricing more. So I think that we are seeing this as an upcoming trend for the next period, really, is the idea of being able to offer the same proposition, but at different prices at different times of the day or week, based on the idea of the guest and what they're looking for. An example of this, which you see at a very core level, is if you go to Temple Bar in Dublin, the amount of money you spend on a pint of Guinness increases almost by €1 every hour for certain hours of the day. And I think that if you've got busy bars that are going to get busier after functions, looking at having dual pricing in your bars, for instance, is an absolute no-brainer. Because if the demand is there, why not capture more?
Thanks, James.
James, I was going to jump in there. Sorry now, and I jumped in too quickly to you, but I think your points are really good. One of the things that we did starting off, and as our kind of volume grew, was that we actually got UK suppliers, smaller, to actually make all of our products. So every single product, every single concept that we develop are actual products that we make within our own by manufacturers that we have that come into our main distributor. Because the issue that we had was that in order for us to sell kind of freezer to fryer, freezer to steamer products, a lot of that quality wasn't on the marketplace. It wasn't through Bid Food. It wasn't through any of the big suppliers. So we had to literally go, well, why don't we go and give them our recipes, get them to make, because we had the volume, get them to make the volume. So everything that we do is from our suppliers to our supply chain. So we believe that it's got to be from, give us hotel, what is your challenge, all the way straight through to, we will actually provide the concept, provide the dishes onto the training, and then we'll give you the brand that should sit in your hotel. And they're all UK. And again, from sustainability, that's also important. But I think unless you're controlling the supply chain at the start, and there are lots of small providers out there, unless you're using that. But there's no doubt that in today's world that you can deliver quality products out there, and there are quality kind of small manufacturers who will make that product for you.
100%.
One thing that we haven't really touched on today is cost management. We're living in an age of inflation, and so I want to give Graham the final word of today's conversation. But quickly, I'm going to come to Martin. How are you reevaluating your supply chain, and also the labour management, your staff in an age of high inflation and when everything's pretty pricey? Could you talk us through your strategy from that perspective?
So in terms of the cost management when it comes to the F&B part, my colleagues from the kitchen department would probably be have more information. Again, it is a big hotel, almost 500 rooms, so it is fairly divided, the responsibilities. But again, from my understanding, it would be quite the standard procedures of, you know, keeping an eye on the food costs. So that's absolutely key. Always knowing what is the percentage of the cost of sales, right? And having some targets so that whenever we notice a trend of, hey, there's an uptick in the costs, let's revise it and see what it might be. It could be, again, there are cases when this is simply due to, again, human errors. You know, somebody ordered something that wasn't the correct choice. The guest did not like the dish. Again, these things can happen, but it could also be mistakes on our side. You know, we've ordered too much food in the first week of January. Turns out that the occupancy was much lower than we thought. So then we end up throwing out a lot of the food. So in this sense, I'm not sure if there would be any special methods that we're using to keep track of the food costs. Kind of, I think that the industry standards. In terms of labor, it would be fairly similar. So we have data about the occupancy, how it basically is throughout the year and then throughout the individual months as well. And based on that, we have allocated headcount, you know, the staff that we have per month. So again, now when we're talking about January, February, the winter months when the occupancy is much lower than spring and summer, the labor is not as high. There's not that much demand for it, and we can afford to keep it a bit lower. I would like to, however, mention that even though the technology that we're implementing in the hotel, we're trying to implement technology as much as we can. Again, the hotel industry is a bit infamous for being a bit behind with the technology. So we're trying to keep up wherever we can, also with, for example, booking, making reservations for restaurants or the mini bars as well. But again, namely Iris, the way in which it helps us the most is that the labor that we have, the staff that we already have in the hotel, has the opportunity to focus on elevating the guest experience. So instead of the call desk agents being tied up because of all the calls regarding, hey, I would like to order a cheeseburger, they instead have the time to focus on elevating the guest experience. And similarly for the in-room dining staff as well. So yeah, that would be something I want to mention. It's not really the question you asked, I understand, but again, very important, I think, to mention that even though it might not directly affect it, the outcome is still very, very positive and beneficial.
I can see that we have quite a few questions coming through from the floor, and I know that we are not going to have enough time to get through all of these, so I'm going to take this opportunity now to say connect with our panelists over LinkedIn, scroll up in the chat, find their profiles and get asking away, because I wish we had more time to get through all of these, but I do want to talk about loyalty and retention and customer retention. So I am going to give the final word to Graham. So we've looked at how we can, maximize revenue potential across other areas of the hotel, working across, your lobbies, your poolside bars, your rooftop terraces, providing convenient, personalized services. What effect is this having on customer loyalty and retention? That's ultimately what hoteliers want. They want to have repeat guests. What are you seeing in this space, Graham?
Yeah, so I mean, I think a couple of things. If I can just say, what everybody has said so far is think outside the box. That's, I think, what everyone has come out with so far is think outside the box. They don't think about your F&B environment as the traditional old in-room dining, for example. Think about other things you can actually do with it. And with technology now, you can certainly add on top of that. But, if I look from a loyalty perspective and a customer loyalty and retention perspective, one of the things that we've done from a technology stack is we really have put a lot of focus into the F&B world. But we have a full stack solution which covers, guest services. It covers the guest directory, as Martin was alluding to there as well. And really just putting everything in your customers' hands makes their journey through your property, and that's pre-arrival through through departure, makes it a far better experience than walking through the door not knowing what's on the menu, not knowing what you can actually do, and putting that in and getting that out to the guests before they arrive, so they've got that experience. They've not got set in their head as to, I'm going to have to order a Uber Eats or whatever the case may be when I arrive there to get something. Putting it in their minds as to, hey, actually we got something great on our property, and I know that before I arrive. We all send out pre-arrival letters. Put the link in there, put the QR code on there, get them to scan it, get them to start playing on it. That sort of stuff, I think, is absolutely vital. And your customers remember it. I mean, I know hotels that I've been to that I'll absolutely go back to again, and I know hotels that I won't. And it's simple as I knew what to expect before I arrived. And I think that's the point of where the loyalty then starts. And so long as you then give them that great experience, as Martin was saying there, is be more attentive to them, elevate their experience, tell them about other things that they could do, that they could engage in while they're there. You've got a host of other activities that a guest can get involved in outside of the F&B space as well. And by leveraging technology to make the F&B slightly easier, it gives you that opportunity to create more loyalty in everything else that you do at your property.
I think it goes back to the point that I think James made at the beginning of this conversation, that food and beverage is the beating heart or the hub of a hotel experience, and that everything else effectively stems from that. I'm going to end on that note because I can see that we are almost at the end of the hour. So I'm going to flag here that we're going to keep this webinar open right at the end, just to allow our audience members to follow up with any of the links that we have popped into the chat. So you can do that whilst the video is being played. But just some closing slides before we finish off here. I'm going to be hosting the next BHN webinar on Monday, the 5th of February, so a week today. And we're going to be looking at the secrets to hotel and venue success. So very much focused on the meetings and events sector there. Would love to see you. The link to register has been popped into the chat. And if you're interested in working with Boutique Hotel News, either across our digital events, but also in-person events too, please do get in touch with my colleagues, Rav or Piers. Their details are on your screen and also popped into the chat. So a huge thank you to Iris today for sponsoring. Thanks a lot to Graham for sharing your insights. Thank you to Philip, James and Martin for commenting and sharing additional thoughts and opinions. Hopefully I'll see you in a week's time. Otherwise, enjoy the rest of your afternoon and I'll see you very soon. Take care.
Sectors with breaking news, comments, trends and opinion across a variety of multimedia solutions. We provide an inspirational community to connect people through world-class events, webinars, podcasts, award schemes and much more. But let us share our story of who we are and what we do. Over 10 years ago, Piers and George had a light bulb moment to provide expert opinion, comments and low-cost digital content. And so they went on a journey over the past decade, creating media platforms to serve the hospitality and real estate industries. We now have an engaged audience with a reach of over 60,000 monthly visitors across our website, 48,000 of our email database across all the sectors, and over 67,000 across our social channels. Everything we do believe in challenging the status quo. We believe in thinking differently. We make things simple and very easy to work with us. And we're a friendly bunch too. We offer creative solutions to help you achieve your business goals. Read, watch, listen, meet with IHM. Contact us for a chat today. Just look at some of the brands we have worked with recently.